What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips for Game Week 8. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's squads and give my opinion on whether they are good moves or not. I also wanted to let you know that Fantasy Football Hub have a 7-day free trial at the moment and 30% off. So if you want to check out the tools that they've got completely free, you can do that using the link in the description below. See how you get on. If you want to continue that subscription on an annual or a monthly basis, you can do that. Like I said, links in the description below. Let's get into the first player. So I'm going to ease myself back into FPL content by talking about Bukayo Saka, who did feature in last week's early thoughts video, but since then has picked up a yellow flag in FPL after going off with a knock playing for England in their first game during the international break. Now, I know with Saka, it feels like quite often we see him limping towards the end of matches and then he's fine for the next one. But I do think there was a genuine issue there. I watched the game. He seemed to be holding his hamstring. Then a couple of minutes later, Greece scored and then Saka got subbed off. So I think he did feel something. Whether or not it was a major issue, we don't yet know. Lee Carsley, the England manager, or the interim England manager, I should say, said he'll probably be fine, but we're going to need to hear from Mikel Arteta. I wouldn't be surprised if he just felt something and didn't want it to get any worse and so just decided to come off. So he's probably going to be fine for Bournemouth, but I thought it was worth mentioning. If he is okay and we don't get any indication that he's going to miss the game, I think he's a pretty easy hold for Bournemouth away. I think it's a decent enough fixture. The only player in and around his price that I'd maybe be looking to move to is Son, because of Spurs' fixture swing they've got over the next 4 games. So just a quick reminder of what that is. It's West Ham at home this week, then it's Palace away, Villa at home, Ipswich at home. So the next 4 are pretty good. In terms of fixtures only, Son is definitely better than both Palmer and Saka over the next 4. And I think Son also fell in price last night as well. Let me just double check. Yeah, he's gone down to 9.8. So he's currently flagged as well in FPL. But Ange Postecoglou is a lot more open than Arteta is. So we'll know if Son's available. There is part of me that thinks there's no rush to get him in. If you've had a bit of a hamstring problem, you've missed games. Is there going to be not a longer term issue there, but could there be a reoccurrence of that issue in that West Ham game? Possibly. But that's the only player I think I'd look to move to. I think with Cole Palmer, he's a great option moving forward. But I just don't really see a massive rush to bring him in when it's Liverpool away in the next game. And obviously, Bournemouth away is better for Saka. So I think if he's fine, we definitely keep hold of him. If there's any doubts going into that Bournemouth game and a genuine chance that he's going to miss out, I'm going to be pretty tempted to sell him because 10.1 million feels like too much money to have on the bench, especially when it's Liverpool at home in 9 and Chelsea away in 11. So I think in that case, I would move him on. In terms of what I would personally do for my team, I'm not quite sure. I wouldn't have the money to go straight to Cole Palmer, so I'd be tempted to take a punt on Son. If not, I would just set up a move for Palmer later on. So, for example, I could do Saka to Brennan Johnson, who's someone we're going to talk about later on. Let me just bring him up here. And then after that Liverpool away game for Palmer, when he plays Newcastle at home, I think it's Newcastle. I need to check. I'm all over the place. I've not recorded a video for over a week. Yeah, Newcastle at home in Game Week 9. Then I would just do Fernandes to Palmer then. So that would be like a bit of a setup by getting rid of Saka and then worrying about whether or not to bring him in later on. I think overall for Arsenal's fixtures from 12 onwards, they're really good. If you're limited on the amount of Arsenal players you've got right now, you're thinking about selling them, absolutely fine. The next 4 fixtures are not amazing. They've got 3 away games in the next 4. Liverpool's the home game. But from 12 onwards, you're probably going to want some of them back. So no more news or Arteta being fairly positive, and I know he doesn't always give us information, but if it looks like he's going to play against Bournemouth, I think Saka's a pretty easy hold for most people. Any doubts, and I think that's just too much money, and I'd probably look to move it on. So as I've just mentioned him briefly, I thought I'd talk a little bit more about Cole Palmer. He's had almost the same number of transfers in this week as Saka, sitting at 170,000 so far, and I don't think there's any issues wanting to bring him in because of how well he's done so far this season. 9.6 points per match is absolutely crazy. But unless you're on wildcard, there really is no rush to bring a player in before Liverpool away. And I know people will say he's in great form. You know, he can score against anyone. He's fixture proof. I get that. But on paper, Liverpool away is still a pretty tough fixture. And their defence has been very good so far this season. We haven't really seen it truly tested too many times because the fixture run has been pretty kind for Liverpool. But I just wouldn't see that as an easy fixture. So I think unless you're on wildcard, or, you know, you want to get rid of Saka because you're worried about that yellow flag and you just want to get someone in for the long term, I don't think there's a rush to bring him in, and you could definitely delay that move until game week 9 when you've got Newcastle at home. Even game week 10, by the way, Man United away, it feels like it's not that bad of a fixture, and I wouldn't be worried about it, but we saw what Man United defended like against Aston Villa. That might be something that Ten Hag goes back to. Stops worrying about trying to score goals and just gets more defensively sound, because obviously the results so far this season haven't been great, and they did defend pretty well against Aston Villa, so that could be a sign of things to come over the next couple of weeks. So I think Man United away is an okay fixture, but it's still not one I would look to target. So if I had Palmer, I wouldn't be worried about it. But I look at that Liverpool away, Man United away, Arsenal at home next 3. I just... And look, maybe I'm going to fall down the ranks even more and I'm going to get this completely wrong. I just don't look at Palmer thinking I'm massively worried about him. I'm a little bit worried because his ownership is so high. He's going up in price and I've already missed a bunch of points. But I look at those fixtures and just think, could those points slow down a little bit? Possibly. But at the end of the day, the stats are still amazing. 0.43 expected goals per 90, and that's non-penalty. And 0.24 expected assists. And he's on penalties as well. He's still a great option. The only thing I would say... And again, I think he's brilliant, right? So don't shout me down in the comments. He has overperformed quite a lot so far. Like expected goals non-penalty 0.43, actual goals 0.91. I know there's been a penalty or two in there. And then for assists, expected assists 0.24, actual assists 0.76 per 90. So the amount of points he's getting might slow down a little bit, especially with the fixture schedule they've got over the next 4. But I still don't have a massive problem if people are looking to bring him in. Like he's someone you're going to want from game week 12 onwards. I think most people will be having a plan to bring him in. I think a lot of people might even skip Salah to do it. So you go down to Palmer, he's even cheaper. Great option from 12 onwards, and you save a bit of money. I just think if you're sat there panicking about it before Liverpool away, I just don't know if there's a need to do that, basically. But then again, I might be sat here this time next week saying, yeah, now's the time to get Palmer. He's just smashed it against Liverpool. Why are we waiting any longer? So who would have thought at the start of the season that James Justin for Leicester would have had a price rise by game week 8? But that has happened. He's gone from 4.5 to 4.6 million. And that's off the back of 3 attack and returns in the last 2 games. So it was an assist and clean sheet against Bournemouth in game week 7 and 2 goals against Arsenal in game week 6. So even though they conceded 4 goals, he still walked away with a 12-pointer. So 22 points over the last 2 game weeks meant that he's had a lot of transfers in, and this week alone it's 150,000. I get why people are going there, but I don't think the fixture run is that great. I don't think Leicester defence is great at all, and I'm not sure James Justin is this massively attacking defender either. The underlying numbers don't suggest that. Like so far, 0.04 expected goals per 90, it's hardly anything really. And 0.01 expected assist, not exactly massively creative either. And even if you look at the next 3 fixtures, okay, Forest at home in 9 is okay-ish, and they get to play the other 2 promoted sides in Southampton and Ipswich, but they're both away games. So Southampton away in 8, Forest at home in 9, Ipswich away in 10. I'm not sure how much of my own money I would put on those fixtures being a clean sheet for Leicester. Then you've got Man United away, Chelsea at home, Brentford away. So the fixtures aren't great. There doesn't look to be a huge amount of attacking potential that's going to continue. I know he's got 3 returns in 2, but I'm not expecting that to be a sign of things to come. And also, if I take a look on Hub's Opta Stats tool, I should say, and obviously if you want to check this out, there's a 7-day free trial at the moment, links in the description below. If I go to teams, and then I think it's defensive, we can look at the expected goals conceded. So if I just order that from the worst to best, like Leicester are second worst team this year. So Ipswich have conceded the most expected goals, 15.21. And then in 7 games for Leicester, it's 14.48. So over 2 expected goals conceded per match. And individually, like you look at the Bournemouth game, okay, they kept a clean sheet at home. They conceded 2.16 expected goals. I just, even if you factor in the fact that they did really badly against Arsenal, there's not a huge amount of games in there where you think, okay, that was an okay defensive performance. And they do have a manager that likes to set up quite defensively, so they will pick up the odd clean sheet along the way. I don't know if there's a huge amount coming. Maybe over the next 3, because you get to play Southampton and Ipswich. But the fact they're both away games, I don't know. It's just, I know he's cheap, right? So it's not like a massive amount of your budget being used. But I think there's better defenders around that price. And now you're going to ask me to name some. Well, one straight away would probably be Van de Ven. I think the same price. Okay, Spurs defence is not amazing either. I get that. I think the fixtures are a little bit kinder. And I would rate the Spurs defence above Leicester. Like so far, if we just look at their stats, Spurs are they've actually done really well. They've only conceded 7.66 expected goals so far. That puts them in the top 5, just behind Chelsea, Arsenal, Villa, Liverpool. It doesn't feel like that, and I wouldn't say that I think Spurs defence are as good as Arsenal or Liverpool, right? Far from it. It's definitely better than Leicester. And in the next 6 game weeks, you've got 4 home games against West Ham, Villa, Ipswich, and Fulham. Now, to be fair, there's some good attacking teams in there, but it's still not a bad fixture run. So I would much rather go for Van de Ven. The only argument to not do that is obviously you might want 3 other Spurs players, right? You might want like Solanke, Johnson, possibly Pedro Porro because he's more attacking. But in isolation, I'd rather have the Spurs defender than a Leicester one. And if I just actually go here, let me see what Hub's got as their... I'm going to go on the points predictions for 4.6 million defenders over the next few weeks. So Aït-Nouri, of course. I mean, Man City at home, Brighton away, not great. But after that, it's a really good fixture run for Wolves. I'd much rather have Aït-Nouri. For 0.2 million less, by the way, for the longer term, you've got Moreno at Nottingham Forest. You can pick up Milenkovic as well for 4.5. They got some okay fixtures coming up. Palace at home this week. Leicester away in 9. I'd rather have a Forest defender against Leicester away than a Leicester one at home. Then West Ham at home in 10. Brentford defenders, of course, after Man United away, got good fixtures. Leif Davis for Leicester, more attacking than Brennan Johnson. Everton at home in 8. Leicester at home in 10. I know he's got 3 returns. I just can't see any point in buying him, honestly. So let's stick to defenders and talk about Ibrahima Konaté next. Still pretty popular, just over 120,000 transfers in this week. He's gone from 5 to 5.2 million since the start of the season. And it's no wonder why, really, because he's sitting in the top 3 for points scored for defenders so far. So Trent is top with 41, then it's Gabriel with 39, and then it's Konaté with 37, just ahead of Van Dijk, who cost 0.8 million more, sitting at 36 points. So he's been really good value. I can see why people are continuing to bring him in. I would say there's probably, a bit like Cole Palmer, there's probably no rush to get him in game week 8. Maybe if you're on wildcard and you want a cheap Liverpool defender long term, fair enough. But if you're not, like Chelsea at home is not going to be that easy to get a clean sheet. It's going to be a real test of how good this Liverpool defence is. And then Arsenal away in 9 is one of the worst fixtures you're going to get all season. So potential for Liverpool to get clean sheets, of course, but it's going to be more difficult over those next 2 games. Then you've got Brighton at home, Villa at home and Southampton away between game weeks 10 and 11. I think on paper that's probably fine, although Brighton and Villa are also pretty capable attacking teams as well. So as a Trent owner, I'm a little bit worried about the amount of clean sheets he's going to get over the next 4 fixtures. But given how solid Liverpool have been defensively and the fact they're at home in 3 of the next 4, I can see why people are maybe looking to bring a defender in. I think since the start of the season, I've been a little bit worried about Konaté's minutes, his injury record and stuff like that. But I feel like I've got to change my opinion on that. He keeps playing. There is maybe some risk there, but at 5.2 million, that's probably a risk worth taking. And I think longer term, for those of us that are maybe on Trent already, if you want a Liverpool defender, I don't really see a need to downgrade Trent to Konaté, but there is definitely an argument to potentially double up at some point and have both. Like at the moment, I can't really see a reason to go for Robertson. I think he's going to miss too many games, as we've already seen. And I think for Van Dijk, look, he's absolutely nailed. We know that. But at 0.8 million more, I think I would take the risk on Konaté and just spend that money elsewhere. I do look at the fixture run. I do, like from game weeks 8 to 15, like you can frame this different ways, right? So I've already said 3 of the next 4 are at home, but it is Chelsea, Brighton, Villa. Like if you're saying that, Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal are 3 of the best attacks in the league, the next tier down is probably teams like Brighton and Villa. So a little bit concerned there. Southampton away in 12 is fine. Then it's City at home, which is tough. And then it's even 2 more away games after that. Newcastle away, Everton away. So I look at this fixture run between 8 and 15. I'm not, even as a Trent owner, I'm not looking to get rid of him because he's so attacking as well. But I am still thinking, like, where are the clean sheets going to come from? But at the same time, if we go back to the defensive numbers, Liverpool have conceded the least amount of expected goals so far this season. Now, they have had a really good fixture run. I get that. But they're still really impressive numbers. Like 4.87 expected goals conceded in 7 matches. That's really good. So there is a chance that even in some of these more difficult games, they will keep the score down and possibly walk away a clean sheet. So I'm kind of in two minds. I don't think the fixtures are brilliant, but I think Liverpool defence might be pretty damn good. And so I think if you want a defender, 5.2 million is such a good price. I still think he's more likely to miss a game than a Trent or a Van Dijk. But from what we've seen so far, looks like his minutes are going to be pretty consistent. So let's stick to Liverpool and talk about Mo Salah next. He's had over 150,000 transfers out so far this week, ahead of that match against Chelsea at home. And obviously then it's Arsenal away in game week 9, which is going to be tough for any attacker. I think from an attacking perspective rather than a defensive one like with Konaté, the 3 fixtures after that are actually pretty good. Brighton at home, Villa at home, Southampton away. I'd quite like to own a Liverpool attacker like Salah for those matches. And so because of that, I think in terms of whether it's right or wrong to sell Salah this week, there's not really a definitive yes or no, right? A lot of it is going to come down to captaincy. Who are you happy captaining over the next few weeks? Because I suspect a lot of people are selling Salah potentially to fund a move for Haaland. I think if you look at game weeks 8 and 9, Haaland probably is the best captain. Like Wolves away in 8 and then Southampton at home in 9. Salah's got Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. Cole Palmer's got Liverpool away, Newcastle at home. Saka's got Bournemouth away. Who is it in 9? Chelsea at home, right? Let me just double... Oh, sorry, Liverpool at home, of course. So in terms of the main players people are looking to captain, Haaland is the best. So I understand that people might want to get him in. But also, if you've been on a Salah team and it's working really well and long-term you want to stick to that, you could look at potentially alternative captains instead. Now, I mean, captaining Salah against Chelsea at home is not the end of the world. And in game week 9, a player we're going to talk about later on, in Mbeumo against Ipswich at home, is an alternative. You might have Watkins against Bournemouth at home, for example. If you've got Palmer, he could be a captain instead of Haaland in game week 9 against Newcastle at home. And I'm not saying those other players I've mentioned are better than Haaland, but for 1 week, if you want to stick to the no Haaland drafts, that could be something you could consider. And then for game weeks 10, 11 and 12, Salah's probably one of the better captains then. So Salah's got Brighton at home in 10. Haaland is Bournemouth away. Saka is Newcastle away. And obviously Palmer's Man United away. So you'd probably argue that Salah's right up there. Like I will have Haaland, right, for game week 10 almost certainly. I'm more than happy to captain him against Bournemouth away. But I think Salah's fine against Brighton at home. In game week 11 when Salah's got Villa at home, it is Brighton away for Haaland. Again, not a problem. But also Salah is perfectly fine. Palmer and Saka play against each other. And maybe if you've got like a Son or someone like that, you could captain him against Ipswich at home. So it's really going to come down to your own preference on whether you want to stick to a no Haaland draft and who you're happy captain over the next few weeks. And I can't tell you what's right or wrong there. I've got a Haaland draft right now. No Salah, no Palmer. I've only got Saka. I'm okay with that for the next 2 weeks because Haaland captain looks so good for 8 and 9. But after that, there's big decisions to be made about maybe moving off Haaland and going to more money in midfield instead. So for anyone that sold Salah, getting the names mixed up now, I think it's fine, right? And some of you might even be just looking to move to Saka or Palmer to save some more money, right? I get that. But I do think Salah is a pretty good option for 10, 11 and 12. And so if you're already on Salah and not Haaland, is it worth... I mean, if you're transferring Haaland in, it's getting a bit complicated now and just leaving it, fair enough. But if you're going to bring Haaland in to then take him back out again to get Salah back, I do question whether that's worth the transfers. Because it's costing you 2 every time to do that because you've got to shift money around. So 4 transfers to get Haaland just for Southampton at home. It could be a big enough week that it massively pays off. But I think if I was already doing pretty well on a Salah-only draft, I'd be quite tempted to stick with it. So as a non-owner, I'm happy people are selling Salah because he has done pretty well this season, 8.9 points per match. I don't know if everyone needs to do that. I mean, don't get me wrong, the next 2 fixtures are not great. There's a lot more to consider, and there's only so many transfers you've got. So I'd have a big think about captaincy. Whether you've got Salah, Haaland, neither, whatever it is, just be sure you've got someone you're happy to put the armband on over the next few weeks. And then just go from there. Just as long as you're happy with your team, that's all there is to it. So, unfortunately, I would say there's no right or wrong on selling Salah. I get why people are doing it, but I don't think it's a must or anything like that. So I just wanted to quickly talk about Bryan Mbeumo. He continues to be really popular, over 200,000 transfers in so far this week. His ownership's up to 27.1%, overall, and his price has gone from 7 to 7.5 million. Now, just in case there's some people out there that think, well, he's gone up in price now, is it still worth buying him? I'm behind the curve on everyone else that got him cheaper. Yes, he is still worth buying for what he offers. I don't think he's must own for game week 8 for Man United away, although it's still not that bad of a fixture. But after that, the fixtures are so good, and what he offers for 7.5 million is still extremely good value, right? Nailed on minutes, penalties, good stats as well. He's got everything you could want from an FPL pick, and I'd much rather have Mbeumo than someone like a Diaz or a Maddison even, or a Jota or someone like that. Like, Mbeumo is just that good, and the fixture run just carries on being great for quite a while. So after Man United away, Ipswich at home, Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, Everton away, Leicester at home. Even after that, like Villa away in 14, not terrible. Newcastle at home in 15, not terrible. Then it's Chelsea away, a bit more difficult. Then it's Forest at home, and Forest have defended pretty well. But none of these matches you're going to be worried playing Mbeumo in. Even if you go longer term than that, right? Brighton away, okay. Arsenal at home, difficult. Southampton away in 20, good. Then it's Man City at home, Liverpool at home, bit more difficult. And look, maybe if you got to, and we're way ahead of ourselves here now. We've got past Christmas at this point. Maybe if you're getting to game week 19 and you don't own him, possibly you sell him. Possibly you don't buy him because it's Arsenal, City and Liverpool all at home over 4 fixtures. But if you're just getting him now, you'll probably just hold on to him. You'll probably get to Arsenal and think, well, it's Southampton after that. And okay, then it's 2 games against City and Liverpool. But then it's Palace away, Spurs at home, West Ham away, Leicester away, Everton at home. Like, you can just keep him for ages. Like, he's just one of those players that if he's fit, you're never going to have a good reason to sell him. And that's a good thing. He's just such good value for 7.5. Even to the point where if he went up to 8 million and you were buying him in like 4 or 5 game weeks time, he would still probably be a good option to bring in. So if anyone's out there hesitating on him, I just wouldn't. I would get him in. You don't have to force him in this week. You don't have to take a hit. But from game week 9 onwards, I would want him. And I think for people that really want to go against Haaland, which is absolutely fine, Mbeumo is not a bad alternative for captaincy in game week 9 against Ipswich. So Brennan Johnson is up to 6.6 million now. So that gap between him and James Maddison is being closed a little bit. Maddison is still at 7.5 million. And if I was deciding between the two, I think I'd much rather have Brennan Johnson plus 0.9 million to spend elsewhere. James Maddison in his own right is still a great FPL pick. The underlying numbers are good. He's sitting at 2 goals, 3 assists so far this season. And I think he will keep ticking over with returns. But I'd rather have that 0.9 million to spend elsewhere. And it's not like Brennan Johnson is going to stop getting returns either, right? He's not going to score. I think he's on 6 goals in 6 games. That's probably not going to continue. But his own underlying numbers are still really good. 0.54 expected goals per 90. He is just more of a goal threat than James Maddison in that team. I think for 6.6 million, there are not many midfielders around that price that are looking better right now. The Spurs fixtures are really good, especially the next 4. West Ham at home, Palace away, Villa at home, Ipswich at home. Even after City away in 12, is Fulham at home in 13. And if any team is going to give Man City a difficult game, it's going to be someone like Spurs. Obviously Arsenal and Liverpool as well. But I think the way that Ange Postecoglou sets his team up, and there's no question about the fact he's going to attack, there'll probably be goals in that Man City game as well. And if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be on the counter. And someone like Brennan Johnson with his pace will cause them problems. Now, I'm not saying you would buy Brennan Johnson for the Man City game. Of course not. But as one game of the next 6 that looks a bit more tougher on paper but may still get something, I think it's fine. So I really like Brennan Johnson as a pick right now. The only question, I guess, slightly is his minutes or his starts. But I don't think the starts are under question. He very rarely gets to 90 minutes. It's only happened twice this season. I don't see who's going to come into the team for him. Like, when Son's back and Solanke's playing up front, Werner's going to come out of the team. He's not going to go and play right wing instead of Brennan Johnson. It's just not going to happen. So I guess the only player really is Odegaard, who might be back for game week 8. But I just don't think... I think with the way that Brennan Johnson is playing right now, that would be more just a sub on later on in games. And we already know that Johnson's not going to play 90 minutes that often, so it's not a massive problem. And Odegaard might not even be back. We'll have to wait and see what Ange Postecoglou says. So I just think he's a great pick right now. I don't know if I'm going to get the chance to bring him in or if I'm going to do it, when that's going to be. But I think if you want a midfielder in and around that price, you don't have the 7.5 for Mbeumo, whatever it might be. I just think Johnson looks great right now. So Nicholas Jackson has started to have a few transfers out. He's been sold by over 100,000 FPL managers ahead of Game Week 8. And he's one of those FPL picks that I think is actually pretty good. So Newcastle at home in 9, Man United away in 10, Leicester away in 12, and Villa at home in 13. Not that bad. The underlying numbers are great. 0.79 expected goals per 90 is brilliant. He's got 7 attacking returns so far. He looks to be nailed on in that Chelsea 11. There's a lot to like. But at the same time, as a non-owner of Nicholas Jackson, I've got no plans to bring him in anytime soon. And I also completely get why people are selling him. Because it's Liverpool away in 8, Arsenal at home in 11, and you've only got 3 forward spots. And if you're trying to fit Haaland in, those other 2 spots, like, is there a place for Nicholas Jackson? Like, he is 7.9 million now, which is not super expensive, but it's not cheap either. Like, someone like Dominic Solanke, for example, that I do own, he's got much better fixtures over the next 4. And we've already discussed Spurs fixtures, so I won't get into them again. But I'd much rather have Solanke than Jackson. You've also got the likes of Chris Wood, scoring plenty of FPL returns for only, I think it's 6.2 million he's priced at now because he went up again in price. Yeah, 6.2. He's got 4 goals this season. The fixtures look pretty good. Delap is doing really well as well. And people are trying to fit in more premium midfielders. And to do that, you've got to make sacrifices somewhere. So, look, Liverpool away is not a good fixture. I won't pretend it is. I said the same thing for Palmer. But after that, apart from Arsenal at home in 11, it's actually all right. But I also get why people are selling him. This is a player that, as long as he remains in that Chelsea 11, which looks likely, will continue to do well. He's at 6 points per match. Those underlying numbers are really good. But I also think it's perfectly reasonable to sell him, especially if you're trying to fund money elsewhere, or you just want to bring someone in who's a little bit cheaper with better fixtures like Solanke. So Jackson's done really well. 2 goals, 1 assist against West Ham a few game weeks ago. Another assist against Brighton. Yes, he blanked against Forest. That can happen. But I think those points, again, are probably going to go down a little bit over the next few weeks. And there's probably better forwards out there that are also a little bit cheaper. So I think it's fine to sell him if you've got that spare transfer to do so. If you have enjoyed that video, you're glad the content is back on this channel, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Trying to build towards 500,000 subscribers. If you're listening on podcast, make sure to rate 5 stars as well. Otherwise, I'm going to be back tomorrow for the Game Week preview, Thursday for team selection, Friday for final thoughts, and then Saturday for the deadline stream as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.